Well, President Trump and his campaign pushing back today against intentionally misleading reports in the left-wing national media. Jeff Bezos' Washington Post reporting the Trump campaign had filed a new revised complaint in Pennsylvania. The Washington Post went on to claim that new filing removed allegations that Republican poll watchers had been denied the ability to see almost 700,000 votes be counted. President Trump set the Post straight on Twitter. He said, quote, "The Washington Post forgot to read the complaint. Fake news. Poll watchers and the way they were treated are a very big deal in the complaint." Oral arguments begin in that case tomorrow in front of an Obama-appointed judge in Pennsylvania. Well, now to the widespread irregularities, anomalies, and cheating in the presidential election. President Trump's legal team says potentially rigged voting machines demand a national security investigation. They are pointing to Dominion voting systems widely used, ballot scanning machines, whose software is suspected of inflating vote totals for Joe Biden. Dominion systems used in more than 24 states. Dominion, also one of 3 companies accounting for almost 90% of the voting equipment in the U.S. elections. The radical Dems, the rhinos, corporate left-wing national media, of course, quick to dismiss any concern about Dominion voting machines being manipulated as a quote-unquote conspiracy theory. But just last year, Democrats were suffering from the same conspiracy theory. Democrats Elizabeth Warren, Ron Wyden, Amy Klobuchar, and Mark Pocan admitted that Dominion voting systems were prone to security issues. Dominion has connections to UK-based Smartmatic, a voting technology company established in 2000 that had ties to Venezuela's Hugo Chavez. Smartmatic, once the subject of a Treasury Department investigation into its connections with the Venezuelan government. 3 of their employees were also charged in 2016 with illegally altering code on an election server in the Philippines national election. Peter Neffenger sits as the chairman of Smartmatic's board. Neffenger has also been added to Joe Biden's presumptuous transition team. Smartmatic says the majority of their shares are owned by SGO Corporation. The chairman of that organization's board is none other than Lord Mark Malloch Brown. He's a member of the UK House of Lords. He also sits on the global board of George Soros's Open Society Foundation. And in a 2015 interview on Filipino television, Malloch Brown said part of their technology is licensed from Dominion voting systems. Smartmatic now says that isn't true. Smartmatic also told us today they only provided technology and software in Los Angeles County during this year's presidential election. A Politico article from March, in fact, documents that numerous security flaws were discovered in Smartmatic software by California's Secretary of State and outside computer experts. Politico reporting, quote, "Those security gaps, if left unfixed, could provide a gateway for a rogue election staffer or someone else with physical access to alter software on the voting machines or their back-end computer systems, possibly changing votes or otherwise disrupting the presidential race." Well, joining us now, Republican National Committee Chair Ronna McDaniel. Ronna, great to have you with us. This is an extraordinary situation. I don't know if you knew the extent of the complaints about all of the various voting companies that counties all over the country, some 3,100 of them, do business with and that run our electoral system in effect. Your reaction to what the Trump legal team and others are discovering about Dominion, Smartmatic, and many of the other voting companies, which almost seems like at least a very much in election terms probable cause for a complete and thorough investigation.
Well, I listened to Sidney Powell yesterday, who I know is going to be on your show, and Rudy Giuliani, and they are pursuing this, and they are taking every lead seriously, and they have affidavits and people talking about this software It is deeply concerning. We had a situation in Michigan where one county had a 6,000 vote flip from Biden to Trump because of this Dominion voting machine. So we have to pursue this. And it's interesting how everybody wants us to sweep everything under the rug. Let's just move on. Let's unite. Let's be done. They didn't do that for President Trump with an investigation into Russia collusion that showed nothing. Millions of taxpayer dollars. FISA warrants based on a fake dossier. This is a president who has more headwinds than anyone, and voters want to know what happened with this election. And thankfully, we have a legal team that's being very aggressive in pursuing every lead.
And the Republican Party itself, I know that there are lots of you have lots of elements in your very busy schedule and agenda, but right now we are seeing, to me, a disturbing quiet from many Republicans rather than the aggressive. Some Republicans are being very aggressive, as you very well know, but they're primarily in the House of Representatives, very little from the Senate. That's disturbing. This is a president, this is a nation that has just been wronged mightily. Only an idiot would try to claim that there were no irregularities, that there were no anomalies, that there were insufficient evidence and documents suggesting fraud, and inexplicable mathematical ratios that tell us very quickly there is something terrible afoot here. How is it possible that there are Republicans that are lining up with Democrats and saying, move on, and let's just forget the last 4 years of persecution by the Democrat Party against a sitting president in an effort to besmirch him, to deny him the presidency, then once in that presidency, as you said, trying to overthrow him. This is simply a continuation of their conduct, their behavior, and there has to be accountability here. It should be demanded by every single American, let alone every Republican.
Well, and let's look at Republicans who benefited. The whole party has benefited from the Trump movement. He has expanded our party. Gains in the House, keeping the Senate, state legislators. This has been a massive Trump wave that we saw this election. And this is a president who's been fighting every day to expand our party, and he did. And so when I see people not willing to listen to these stories, and I've heard them personally, Lou, I've talked to these people who were at the TCF Center in Detroit who say this was the most, undemocratic election I've ever seen. They were hiding ballots. We weren't able to meaningfully observe. When you have
it's the worst in our country's history, Ronna. We don't have to talk about lifetime experience. This is the worst in our country's history. There is no election in our presidential history, our nation's history, in which there were so many anomalies, so many irregularities, and so much clear evidence of fraud.
And laws changed, because of COVID. They used COVID to rig the laws, to get all these ballots out, to make a porous system. And you know what? Voters are mad, and Republicans are mad, and we are going to pursue this, and we are not just going to lay down. We have got to figure out what happened, and we've got to make sure that we have faith in our election process, and we need Republicans and Democrats with us. Everyone should be doing this right now, because what we're seeing across the country is really frightening in all these states where Republicans were disenfranchised and unable to observe.
So what's the next step for the Republican Party, for the RNC? I can remember an autopsy report from 2012. And what I see is a party that is trying to move, at least a good part of it, back toward the same demeanor and attitude as existed before that 2012 report after the defeat of Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan. Tell me that that isn't going to happen and that we're going to hear this party stand up for this president. Because in my opinion, this remains and will for some time, years and years, be the party of Trump. Your reaction?
Oh, 100%. I mean, this president has expanded our party. Look at the growth with Hispanics, with African Americans, with union blue-collar workers. This is a new party, and he got 73 million votes, more than any other president in history. And we want to make sure we keep those voters in the fold, and that's what we need to do with this president. We're going to continue to fight for him. We're not laying down, and then we're going to make sure we keep these Senate seats in Georgia, and we're going to keep pushing forward. But we need to get to the bottom of these election issues and pursue every single one, and that's what the Trump legal team's doing in conjunction with the RNC.
Right. Ronna, we appreciate it as always. Great to see you. Ronna McDaniel, chair of the RNC. Up next, more on the president's battle to uncover fraud and manipulation in the vote of 2020. High-power attorney Sidney Powell on the president's team. She joins us here in just a few moments. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey, have Brady or Breeze said if this is their final season?
They haven't said yet.
Do you think they'd get higher ratings if one of these ageless wonders said it was their final season?
You might be right.
Last Man Standing, the final season, this January on Fox.
That doesn't count as a mask.
Tim Allen is back for the final season of Last Man Standing, coming this January on Fox.
Breaking news now. Documents show that Dominion Voting Systems submitted a bid to the city of Philadelphia in 2018 to be considered as their contractor for voting machines. Those same documents reveal very little about the company's foreign connections. When asked by the city to list any foreign ownership or investors in either the parent company and or its subsidiaries, Dominion had something to say, but nothing to show. The section you see there on your screen is entirely redacted, blacked out, because Dominion ultimately was denied the contract. In just 3 months before Dominion's bid, President Trump signed an executive order against foreign interference in our elections. In that order, President Trump wrote, quote, "The assessment shall identify to the maximum extent ascertainable the nature of any foreign interference and any methods employed to execute it, the persons involved, and the foreign government or governments that authorized, directed, sponsored, or supported it. The Director of National Intelligence shall deliver this assessment and appropriate supporting information to the President." The question is, was the President ever informed of this attempted bid by a company with foreign ties? And why are they being so secretive? Joining us now by phone, Sidney Powell, a member of President Trump's legal team. She is also General Michael Flynn's attorney, former federal prosecutor, best-selling author, one of the country's most prominent appellate attorneys. Sidney, good to have you with us. Dominion Voting System seems to be figuring larger and larger in the interest of your legal team. And what is the latest?
Oh, definitely, Lou. I've just gotten some stunning evidence from a first-hand witness, a high-ranking military officer who was present when Smartmatic was designed in a way that and I'm going to just read you some of these statements, if you don't mind, so I get them exactly right from the affidavit. Designed in a way that the system could change the vote of each voter without being detected. He wanted the software itself to function in such a manner that if the voter were to place their thumbprint or fingerprint on a scanner, then the thumbprint would be tied to a record of the voter's name and identity as having voted, but that voter would not be tracked to the changed vote. He made it clear that the system would have to be set up but not leave any evidence of the changed vote for a specific voter, and that there would be no evidence to show and nothing to contradict that the name or the fingerprint or thumbprint was going with a changed vote. Smartmatic agreed to create such a system and produce the software and hardware that accomplished the result for President Chavez. After the Smartmatic electoral management system was put in place, he closely observed several elections where the results were manipulated using the Smartmatic software. One such election was December 2006 when Chavez was running against Rosales. Chavez won with a landslide over Rosales, a margin of nearly 6 million votes for Chavez versus 3.7 million for Rosales. In 2013, he witnessed another Venezuelan national election where the Smartmatic management system was used to manipulate and change the results for Chavez. And it goes on and on. He was in the control room where multiple digital display screens were shown for results and voting. The actual voting results were fed into that room and onto the displays over an internet feed, which was connected to a sophisticated computer system created by Smartmatic. People in that room were able to see in real time whether the vote that came through the electronic voting system was in their favor or against them. If one looked at any particular screen, they could determine that the vote from any specific area or as a national total was going to be against either candidate. Persons controlling the vote tabulation computer had the ability to change the reporting of votes by moving votes from one candidate to another by using the Smartmatic software.
And Smartmatic, the relation...
Smartmatic.
Sidney, yes, and Smartmatic, the chairman is Admiral Pete Neffenger, who is also on the the vice president's transition team, his presidential, presumptuous presidential transition team. That's an extraordinary situation as well, isn't it?
Yes, it is. So here's the other kicker. When the Smartmatic machines are, when somebody's losing, like, for example, when Maduro and his supporters realized the size of the other guy's lead, they were worried that they were in crisis mode and would lose the election. The Smartmatic machines used for voting in each state were connected to the Internet, reported their information over the Internet to the Caracas Control Center real time, so the decision was made to reset the entire system. Maduro's and his supporters ordered the network controllers to take the Internet itself offline in practically all parts in Venezuela to change the results. It took the voting operators approximately 2 hours to make the adjustments in the vote from Radonsky to Maduro. Then when they turned the Internet back on and the online reporting was up and running again, they checked each screen state by state to be certain they could see each vote was changed in favor of Maduro.
Sidney, you tweeted earlier today about CIA and its association. What have you discovered there?
Well, other than the fact there's no way all this was happening around the world without the CIA knowing about it. I mean, that's just logic. This affidavit also explains it's been used to change election results all over the world. And it's all Venezuelan and Cuban and essentially communist money that's been doing this. It's a foreign-owned company, as you mentioned earlier. The president of it is Mr. Neffenger, who is on Biden's very presumptuous and immediately failing transition team. And people have been reporting this to our government for several years, including Democrats, and nobody's done a damn thing about it, Lou. I can't even express how furious I am over this.
Well, I share your fury and frustration, but I do have some news to break here at this moment. I have now received word from a highly reliable source that the FBI does have an investigative team that is now looking into this election. Now, what that means beyond that, but at least it's confirmation that they are investigating, and we'll see what moves, because there had been no indication that indeed publicly that they were involved. They are now. To that point, I'd just like to show, if we could put up the full screen, under what their authorities are when we talk about these state-run elections, even though they're federal elections for at least a sizable number of the candidates. As you see there, the ballot includes one or more federal candidates, an election of polling place official abuses of their office, the conduct involving false voter registration, the crime intentionally targets minority protected classes, the activity violates federal campaign finance laws. All of this laid out on the FBI website for anyone to look at. And it appears, Sidney, that at least the FBI has finally looked at that website. I'm not sure it was Christopher Wray, but someone at the FBI, and took action. Your thoughts?
Well, my other thought is that as soon as the Smartmatic system changed the votes that they wanted for their desired candidate, by the time they finish, they achieve a convincing but narrow victory of the certain number of votes they want for their candidate. This person saw by his own experience exactly what was happening there was happening here.
It is a deeply, deeply troubling election. As I said earlier, the worst in this country's history, bar none. And we have seen official investigative and Justice Department officials slow to move, and it is infuriating to everyone. The
we've
president,
seen willful blindness. They have adopted a position of willful blindness to this massive corruption across the country. And the Smartmatic software is in the DNA of every vote tabulating company's software and system.
Yes, and it is more than just a willful blindness. This is people trying to blind us to what is going on. We don't even know who the hell really owns these companies, at least most of them. That's got to change, and we've got to find out exactly what's going on. And thank God we've got a president who will stay in the fight all the way through until we get those answers. Sidney Powell, thanks so much. We appreciate it as